Kristina Protić šokirala je sve svojom nevjerojatnom transformacijom, smršala je 110 kg. Ljekari ne mogu objasniti ovaj fenomen, a mi smo saznali njen tajnu. Detalji u ekskluzivnom intervjuu.
Zovem se Kristina Protić. Moj višak kilograma dugo je bio problem za mene. Prelazio je 200 kilograma. Gledala sam sebe u ogledalu i sanjala o promjenama, ali svi moji napori su bili uzaludni. Isprobala sam mnoge metode, stroge dijete, iscrpljujuće treninge, ali težina je stalno vraćana. Počela sam gubiti nadu, sve dok nisam naišla na članak o doktoru Josipu Paladinu. On je rekao da je pokušavanje da se smrša samo uz pomoć dijeta i tableta uzaludno. Isprva sam bila skeptična, ali pažljivo se upoznajući sa njegovom metodom, shvatila sam da je u pravu. Toliko smo dugo verovali u tradicionalne načine mršavljenja koji nisu davali rezultate. Međutim, doktor Paladino nudi drugačiji pristup. I on zaista funkcioniše.
Da, nazvao sam idiotima one koji još uvijek u 2025. godini pokušavaju da smršaju pomoću dijeta i tableta. On stvarno vjeruje da to funkcioniše, ali problem sa viškom kilograma nije u tome šta jedete, već u tome kako vaše tijelo obrađuje hranu. Nakon 30. godine metabolizam se usporava, a hormonske promjene nakon trudnoće čine mršavljenje gotovo nemogućim. Razvili smo novu formulu koja pokreće proces sagorevanja masti iznutra. Već nakon nekoliko dana počet ćete mršaviti, a za mjesec dana nećete prepoznati svoje tijelo. Dovoljno je da uzimate ovaj proizvod jednom dnevno prema uputstvu i možete zaboraviti na dijete, iscrpljujuće treninge i gladovanje. Naš proizvod ruši rekorde prodaje, a više od 50.000 zadovoljnih kupaca u Srbiji ostavilo je pozitivne komentare. Također možete ga nabaviti za svoje bližnje. To će im pomoći da izgube višak kilograma bez strogih dijeta i iscrpljujućih treninga. Ako sada gledate ovu transmisiju na Facebooku, pritisnite dugme, saznajte više i uvjerite se vlastitim očima koliko je ovaj proizvod jednostavan, siguran i brz, a najvažnije, dostupan za sve. Ako ne vjerujete u našu metodu, nastavite da patite. Prijatelji, ne pokušavam vam ništa prodati, samo dijelim najučinkovitiji i najsvrsishodniji način mršavljenja. Odluka je na vama, jer je to vaša težina, a ne moja. I ja sam smršala pomoću ovih metoda i osjećam se sjajno, a i vi možete.
With some dictionaries, if you try to look up a phrasal verb like put down, it will redirect you to the root verb put. This makes it harder to find the information you need. Good online dictionaries let you look up phrasal verbs and idioms directly. Test 6. Is the information presented in a clear, organized way? And is the dictionary website easy to use? This test is more subjective, of course. Finally, we looked for any other features which might be useful for English learners. Remember, if you want to see the full test results, check out the page on our website. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find a link in the video description. So, how did our 9 dictionaries do? Cambridge didn't do very well, which is a shame because it had been my go-to online dictionary before I started making this video. Firstly, it is not complete. It doesn't contain all the possible definitions of a word. Plus, it doesn't have a complete list of related phrasal verbs, idioms, and collocations. On the other hand, for beginners or intermediate learners, there are some good example sentences. The definitions are well written and clear. It does also show the UK and US pronunciation of a word, with audio, so that's a positive. It doesn't clearly show verb complements and structures. Overall, I can't recommend it. One of the biggest problems is that 3 different dictionaries are combined on one page. There's a British English dictionary, an American English dictionary, and a business English dictionary. This makes it confusing to use because different information is in different places and not always where you might expect it. I won't spend more time on it because there are much better dictionaries you can use. Longman was number 1 in our tests. It's by far the most complete dictionary I found. It contained all the information you might need, every definition of the word, possible verb complements, phrasal verbs, idioms, everything you might need is there. Not only that, but they have example sentences, and many example sentences have audio, at least for some words. That makes it a great resource for practicing pronunciation. At the bottom of the page, they also have a large number of examples taken from natural English texts. You can look up phrasal verbs and other word combinations directly. Even the longer phrase, "know what you're talking about," has its own entry with dedicated examples. That's impressive. When you're learning English, you'll often hear that you need to learn language in chunks. This is good advice, so it's great that there are dictionaries which can help you to do this. There's one minor criticism. It gives you the UK and US pronunciations of a word, but it doesn't clearly show which is which. For reference, the UK pronunciation is given first and the US pronunciation second. Longman also has a number of useful features for English learners. If you look up a verb, you can find a verb tense table which lists all the forms and tenses. Finally, it has a good thesaurus which gives you alternative words and also explains what they mean and how they're different from the base word. Generally, I found Longman one of the easiest dictionaries to use. Information is organized and presented nicely, and the page is relatively clean without unnecessary clutter. Dictionary.com isn't really a dictionary in its own right. Instead, it collects information from many dictionaries. In summary, I don't recommend it for English learners. It's reasonably complete, although you won't find much information on idioms and collocations. More importantly, the information is not well organized. A lot of info is hidden behind "see more" links, but there doesn't seem to be any logic to what's hidden and what's displayed immediately. Plus, because it collects information from different dictionaries on a single page, the information is divided into different sections, but not in a logical way. This makes it harder to find what you need. It doesn't do a good job of showing related phrasal verbs, idioms, and collocations. You also can't look up phrasal verbs directly, which is a big disadvantage. Collins has some positive features. It scored 4 out of 5 for completeness. It has clear explanations with examples for each definition. However, a couple of things could be better. Our test word, talk, can be both a noun and a verb. Most dictionaries will separate the noun and verb definitions, which makes sense. Collins mixes them together in a list. It's not bad, but it seems strange, and I think it could be confusing for some users. Also, it gives some information about complements and structures, but it's not so clear. They highlight the structures used in their example sentences, but there's no dedicated information on what structures are possible and what they mean. Finally, like some other dictionaries in our list, Collins tries to combine results from different dictionaries on one page. I think this is terrible design because you might not even realize there are more parts to the page. You see the definitions and explanations. You get down to here and that looks like the end, right? But then there's more, a British dictionary, an American dictionary, and more examples and idioms. Overall, not bad, but it's not the best. Lexico is one of the best dictionaries we tested. I highly recommend it, especially for learners at an intermediate or lower level. Even if you're a higher level learner, give Lexico a try. Why? Because it's so clear and well organized. For example, it gives you one example sentence for each definition, but you can also click to see more if you want. That's a really nice feature. You just need a simple example? You can have it. You want more? You can have that too. In general, Lexico does the best job of presenting a large amount of information in a clear, logical way. However, it's also fully complete. Only 2 dictionaries scored 100% in our completeness tests, Longman and Lexico. Plus, information on phrasal verbs, collocations, and idioms is nicely separated, and you can look up longer phrases directly. For example, if you look up an idiom like talk the talk directly, you'll find a dedicated page. The only negative is that it doesn't explain the difference between UK and US pronunciation or usage. Overall, I also found Lexico to be the cleanest dictionary in terms of design. It's a great choice for English learners. Macmillan is slightly different because it puts different parts of speech on different pages. So if you look up talk, you'll see definitions for the verb only. The noun definitions are on a separate page, which might not be easy to find if you're using a mobile or a smaller screen because they're hidden in this other entries box. I don't think that's a good point. Macmillan has some positives. It has good information on verb complements, which is also nicely presented, and you can look up phrasal verbs and idioms directly. However, it's not complete and it doesn't give any information on UK versus US pronunciation or usage. So it's in the middle. There are better options. I knew about Word Reference as a bilingual dictionary. They have many bilingual versions aimed at speakers or learners of European languages. However, they also include a monolingual English dictionary. Is it any good? It has some advantages, but overall, not recommended. Like dictionary.com, Word Reference collects information from multiple dictionaries, but this means you have too much information on one page, some of which is repeated, and it's hard to find what you need. You also can't look up phrasal verbs or idioms directly. If you try to look up a phrasal verb like pick up, you'll be redirected to the root verb, pick. Then you'll have to find the definition on the page. Word Reference does have one excellent and, at least in our tests, unique feature. For pronunciation, it has audio not just for UK and US English, but also for other regions, such as Ireland or Jamaica. It also includes some regional UK and US accents. This is really useful because actually there isn't just one UK pronunciation and one US pronunciation of a word. There are many English accents in the UK, US, and in other English-speaking countries, and it's good to understand how pronunciation is different in different parts of the world. So maybe use Word Reference for the pronunciation audio, but I don't recommend it as a dictionary. I'll keep this short, don't use Chambers. 2 points. First, they print information in a big block, like you would find in a paper dictionary. This makes sense on paper because you have to save money and space. On the web, there's no reason to do this, and it makes it harder to find what you're looking for. Secondly, Chambers doesn't seem to be aimed at learners of English as a second language. It doesn't give many examples, nor does it give information about verb complements, phrasal verbs, and so on. You can't look up phrasal verbs or other longer chunks directly. It's not terrible, it does the basic job of a dictionary, but I can't see any reason to use it. Merriam-Webster also doesn't have much to recommend it. One major disadvantage, it doesn't give complete lists of phrasal verbs, idioms, or collocations when you look up a word. For talk, it includes 4 phrases here, but why these 4? Why not others? This seems strange. If you're going to include some phrasal verbs or idioms, you should include all of them. There's no information on UK versus US pronunciation or usage. There's also no information on verb complements. They give examples, but the examples aren't full sentences, making them less useful. Finally, the design is weird. There are all these colons and slashes in odd places. Maybe that doesn't bother you, but I found it unnecessary and a little confusing. On the other hand, you can look up phrasal verbs and idioms directly. Also, it has real-life examples which are pulled from the internet, although they aren't always accurately classified. For example, some of the examples for talk as a verb are actually the noun form. Having reviewed these dictionaries, I've switched my go-to online dictionary from Cambridge to Longman and Lexico. Honestly, I was surprised at how badly Cambridge came out of these tests. Although I think Longman is the best, I would actually recommend Lexico for most purposes. It gives you complete information and it's so easy to use. What about you? Which dictionary do you use? Are you planning to switch to a new one? Do you have anything to add to our reviews? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.